NASCAR releases its new tiered penalty system, effectively killing innovation, and we got the first round of Phoenix practice speeds coming up next. What's up, everybody? If I haven't earned your subscription, hopefully I will earn that today. All right, NASCAR has revealed its new leveled penalty system, the 3-tier system. So let's take a look at it real quick before I get into my rant. Level 1 penalties will include team source parts not meeting the NASCAR rulebook or rising to a higher penalty level, failure to meet minimum weight post-race, failure to submit and receive approval of parts in accordance to the NASCAR rulebook, and this will result in a 20 to 75 point dock, a 1 to 10 point playoff point dock, a 1 to 3 race team event roster member suspension, and a $25,000 to $100,000 fine. Level 2 penalties, modifications to the next-gen single-source vendor-supplied parts or assembly not rising to Level 3 penalty, failure to meet the engine seal requirements, major external engine parts not part of the long block that differ from what is required by the rules, anything that alters the engine control system, wiring harness, or certified engine control system, wiring subharness, onboard electronics not approved by advance in approved in advance by NASCAR, violation to the vehicle testing policy not rising to a higher level, and this will be 75 to 120 points, 10 to 25 playoff points, 4 to 6 races, and 1 to 2 positions, $100,000 to $250,000 fine. All right, on to Level 3. Level 3 penalties will include, but are not limited to, counterfeiting or modifying single next-gen source vendors supplied parts and or assemblies, engine infractions, engine performance enhancements, ECU, EFI parts not being used as the rules permit, altering or modifying the tires and or fuel, or violating the vehicle testing policy. We'll call that the Mike Harmon rule. 120 to 180 points, 25 to 50 playoff points, 6 races, 1 to 2 positions, and $250,000 to $500,000 fine. When asked about it, Steve O'Donnell, NASCAR Executive Vice President and Chief Racing Development Officer, had this to say: as we discussed during the test at Charlotte and at length with teams over the offseason, the new deterrence model will be a culture shift in our industry. The car was a collaborative project designed to emphasize performance at the track and the unrivaled abilities of our teams, drivers, and pit crews. There will be strong penalties for any teams who run contrary to that design so the fans can focus on our drivers and the great racing expected from NASCAR. And that all sounds well and good, like they want to put it in the driver's hands, like they want to put it in the team's hands. They don't want people cheating anymore. I get it. It sounds good on paper, but I have 3 concerns. The first one is that you have killed innovation. What made this sport great? The Smokey Yuniks, the Alan Kulwicki's, the Chad Canouses, all those guys, all those big names, Ray Evernham. I mean, stuff like that. Those guys, Larry McReynolds. Those guys will never hardly get mentioned. Those guys will no longer exist if these rules are enforced the way that I'm thinking NASCAR, at least in their mind, is going to enforce them. So going forward, you've killed a big chunk of what made NASCAR special. Those innovative guys that don't drive the race car. You've taken them out of the equation to an extent. Now all you have is essentially your crew chief is a strategist and you've got a driver. My second concern is, as long as there is motorsport, somebody is going to push the gray area until they go over the line and they are caught cheating. It happens in every form of motorsport. Everybody pushes it to the max. You're not going to stop them from cheating. I don't care how strongly you word it. I don't care what the penalties are. I don't care what the fines are. I don't care if you threaten to kick them out of the sport forever. People will still cheat or push the boundaries. So when that happens, and I'm saying when, not when that happens, it'll be interesting to see how NASCAR, if NASCAR actually enforces their rules hardcore like they're saying they are, and B, what type of team gets caught doing it? Is it going to be a lower tier team? And when they put that penalty into effect, is that going to kill that lower tier team? Or is it a higher tier team? And as we've seen in the past, they show favoritism, in my opinion. If it's a higher tier team, they're probably going to get a lesser penalty, which is an absolutely ass backwards way of doing things, but that's the way traditionally NASCAR has done it. You have a lower tier team that made a clearly honest mistake like Carl Long, and they get hit with the biggest rulebook penalty NASCAR had ever levied up to that point. But then you have teams that consistently cheat and get away with it, like, well, let's say Hendrick. I mean, I'm a Hendrick fan, but let's just call it like it is. Chad Knaus was known as Cheating Chad. So it'll be interesting to see if they stay consistent with their penalties and things like that. And finally, just reading the rules as they were written right there, they are worded very vaguely, saying essentially you had three different ones for modifying NASCAR vendor parts. And it says as long as it doesn't go into level 2 or level 3, like that's very vaguely worded. Who is to decide what level 2 and level 3 are? As long as there's judgment like that, it's going to be very inconsistent, because we've seen, if anything's consistent about NASCAR, it's that NASCAR's rulings are inconsistent. So I have some worries about how it's worded. It's worded just vaguely enough to give them wiggle room. So is this really going to change anything? Because if it's worded that vaguely, are they still going to be able to get away with some stuff? And B, are they going to be consistent with how they enforce these rules? Because it is, in fact, worded vaguely, at least in the press readout we got there. All right, on from that negative news to some positive news. The Cup cars were at Phoenix practicing, and once again, the man was on top of the speed charts. He was the only one at a 0.3. Everybody else was 0.4 or below, but let's look at that list real quick. Larson at a 27.329. Tyler Reddick next fastest at 27.4. Joey Logano 27.5. Ricky Stenhouse 27.5. And Kurt Busch / Bubba Wallace with a 27.5 as well. So looking through those results, what was interesting is, except for 3 cars at the very bottom, and we don't know if they didn't tape up and those other cars taped up or whatever, but what is interesting about that is, aside from those 3 cars at the bottom, everybody was within about a half second of each other, so that's good. But what it also tells you is that if you miss the setup with this car, you're going to be way off, and teams that aren't normally up there can get up there. But so far, it looks like the same teams that are always up there are up there. And once again, Penske is showing some speed. And of course, we know the Hendrick cars have some speed. But Tyler Reddick, he's up there. So he might be a dark horse going in. Of course, they have another test tomorrow, or today, I guess, when this comes out. So we will keep up with it and see what happens on day 2 of testing. But all right, I'm going to cut it short here. That is all I've got for you today, guys. If you like the content, please feel free to subscribe down below. If you got a comment, leave it down in the comment section. I try to read as many as I can. And other than that, thanks for your time. Peace.